Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the summary for the day of 714 for the 7th of February. And I want to start off with the weather report. I have been meaning to talk about the weather in Ukraine for some time, but I keep forgetting. So there is significant change in the weather in Ukraine because if you look at the temperature, we are talking about above zero. We are talking about 4 degrees in the Dnipro. We have a 6 degree just off the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. We have 4 degrees south of Mariupol region, Rostov-on-Don region. And near the border at the Luhansk Oblast is 7 degrees. We're talking about above zero, which means the temperature have been is warm enough that all the ice will be melting. And in fact, the footages, the past few days that came out from Ukraine have shown that there is no more snow. Is now dirt, which means that the Rasputitsa, or the muddy period, the muddy season is upon us. The only good news for the forces fighting over in Ukraine right now, be it the Russians or the Ukrainians, is that there is not much rainfall tentatively, because the if I'm not wrong, the wind is mostly coming from Russia, which is mostly landmass, so there's not a lot of water bodies, so there's not much rain. And so there is not much rain being recorded in these regions here. As you can see, we have a little bit over at Severodonetsk, but that is 0.05. That is very little. It's a slight drizzle. And otherwise, the rest of Ukraine, the rest of eastern Ukraine, there is actually no rain. So the muddy season is not here yet, but it's going to be coming soon. The moment the winds start to change direction, where the wind going to come from the Black Sea, and then we're going to see the muddy season hitting Ukraine or the battlefield, the front lines, big time. And then you're going to see a lot of problems coming to mechanical issues among the vehicles. And so that is something to take note. So I will try to remember to talk about the weather. Every time I open the tab, I just left it there and then I forget about it, because I was so engrossed in the talking about the frontline changes or the strategic and tactical reportings. So we move into the frontline changes. That I have already published the frontline changes report on the DPA War channel, so do check it out over there. And there's, however, since then there is just one more update. This is based on geolocation over at the Novomykhailivka region in the Donetsk Front. And so we have reported that the Russian forces have attacked into Novomykhailivka, and this time, this is reported both by the Russians and the Ukrainian open source intelligence, my trusted sources, Deep State UA and Ryba. And there is actually now geolocations coming out from this region. It was mentioned by Ryba, but I didn't have the geolocation coordinates, and is then shared by a military summary. So there is infantry units being recorded on drones that the Russians are attacking this direction, and then infantry is then also spotted here. So in these two different directions, which corroborates the claims of both Deep State UA and Ryba that the Russian forces is now inside the eastern part of Novomykhailivka and the battle is ongoing. But from the footage itself, Novomykhailivka looks super flat. Like, it's just dirt everywhere. There's no standing buildings, so the entire settlement has been totally flattened by Russian bombardments. So we're not going to see much, but we are going to expect the Russians to continue to push towards the center of Novomykhailivka, and it's going to be really hard because looking by the video footages, the Russians have tremendous bombardments and fire superiority, and there's almost nothing in the video footage that suggests the Ukrainians are firing back. So that is actually really bad. The infantry are just running across open fields, and yeah, there is no one shooting them. So that is going to mean a pretty fast collapse of Novomykhailivka if the Ukrainians are not sending reinforcement to stop the onslaught. So that is the frontline changes report. There is one Ukrainian aircraft, a MiG29, shot down over Oleksiivka in the Donetsk Oblast. This is the first Ukrainian aircraft to be shot down in 2 months, 1 to 2 months. I can't even remember when the last time the Ukrainian aircraft got shot down. It has been a long time. So this MiG-29 getting shot down is going to be very painful for the Ukrainians, because given the lack of shoot downs, it either suggests that the Ukrainians have a different way of flying the aircraft already, they changed the tactics, or they are running out of aircraft. And so in that sense, and knowing that they are desperate for F-16s means that they are actually running low on aircraft. Every shoot down is going to be very expensive for the Ukrainians. So we move on to the frontline, the strategic and tactical reporting, and we go on again in clockwise direction from the Kharkiv front. At the Kharkiv front, we have just one geolocation by military summary of Russian airstrike on Oleksiivka, south of Volchansk, and this continues to bring weight onto my theory that one of these vector of attack the Russians are going to do if they reopen the Kharkiv front is going to be through Volchansk, and they're going to be through Volchansk, and they are now softening up the Ukrainian defenses in this region here with all these airstrike bombardments, FPV, and missile strikes. It's just way too intense for a front line that is actually not a front line per se. So we shall continue to monitor the Kharkiv front moving forward. Not moving forward. We are already monitoring it. So yeah, I'm talking nonsense. Moving into Kupyansk front. This is Kupyansk city, and this is Kupyansk front. The Russian forces restarted offensive actions in the eastern part of the Kupyansk front. Let me zoom in a bit. Okay, so the Russian forces attacked Ivanivka and Khyslivka, and then this is on top of the usual of the fighting at Sinkivka. Ukrainians did not attack at Sinkivka. According to the Russians, they attacked at the Sinkovka train station region, which is near Liman Pershi, sorry. So this is the strategic situation over at Kupyansk front. And if I zoom out a little bit, it's actually a bit more. So from all the way to the Svatove Front, not just at Ivanivka and Khyslivka, the Russian forces are also attacking Berestove and Novomykhailivka. And this actually represents two-pronged attack. One on top, one below. So this is actually a two-pronged attack. And there is also information coming from Deep State UA talking about the Russian forces are sending reinforcement to Avdiivka region and to prepare for an attack, for an offensive. Let me zoom in a bit. So again, Ivanivka, Khyslivka, and then Berestove, Novomykhailivka, and then reinforcements are being sent into the Avdiivka region, and they are planning to, at least according to Deep State UA, to launch another attack from the Avdiivka region. And this is looking really bad, because I can say, as I mentioned, this is a two-pronged attack already. And then if this two-pronged attack draws Ukrainian forces away from the center, they are going to get punched right through the center, and it's going to be really painful, so we're going to continue to monitor the situation over at the Kupyansk front. This activation of the front line over in this eastern or southern part of the Kupyansk front and the northern part of the Svatove front is looking really dangerous. If the Russians continue to attack on, we shall continue to monitor the Ukrainians still holding pretty good lines, particularly over at the Ivanivka and Kotyarivka region. But of course, the Avdiivka region, this area here is already kind of fractured, because this is a new breakthrough that happened last week. So the Ukrainians must be busy building up a second line of defense against to prepare for the next assault from the Russian forces. We move on to further south. There's nothing else over at the Svatove front. We move into the Kreminna front. So this is Kreminna, and at the Kreminna front, the Russian forces attack at Terny. Oh, wrong color. Attack at Terny, at Yampolivka, as well as at Torske. The Ukrainian forces is counter-attacking over at Yampolivka and Terny as well. And this is in reaction to the previous day's report. If you have watched yesterday's SITREP, the Russians have major captures over in the Terny and Polivka region. So the Ukrainians are doing counter-offensive actions to try to push back. And there is geolocation of Russian forces confirming that they are indeed in this newly captured region, according to Kreminna geolocation. And there is also another, yet again, the weird report that first was reported on the 31st of January of fighting at Merne. The name being mentioned is Zazinskoye, which is actually the previous name of Merne. We shall continue to monitor to see how is the Russians fighting at this area here, or is this a mistaken identity that the Zazinskoye is actually somewhere else. But tentatively, it seems to be at Merne. We move on away to the Siversk Front. At the Siversk Front, there is only one action over at the Bilohorivka region. The Russian forces are continuing to put pressure on this settlement that is within the Luhansk Oblast. We shall continue to monitor and see how this progress. We move on to the Bakhmut Front. So this is Bakhmut City, the infamous Bakhmut City, and this is the Bakhmut Front. In the northern flank of the Bakhmut Front, the Russian forces continuing their offensive over at the Bodanivka region, as well as at Ivanivsky. The Ukrainian forces counterattack over at Ivanivsky, and this is the current situation. Geolocation of Ukrainian tank getting destroyed along the highway suggests that the front line indeed is correct on our mapping. However, the Ukrainians are finding it very expensive to hold the line. We shall continue to wait and see how this goes. Definitely, the Russians are paying a price as well. Every time they push forward or they hold ground, Ukrainians are also attacking with the FPV drones or artillery systems. So it's not a one-way street. Just that, through the reporting, it just happens that, a lot more of these geolocations happen to be the Russians taking out Ukrainian equipments. We move away from the northern flank to the southern flank. At the southern flank, the Russian forces continue their usual with fighting reported at Klishevka and at Kudyomivka. There is no fighting reported at Indrievka, but we do have Ukrainian forces geolocated within Indrievka. Russian forces geolocated at Klishevka as well. So this mostly confirms where the front line is. And there is a geolocation of Lancet hitting a Ukrainian tank all the way into the rear near Stupovsky. So that's the situation over at the Bakhmut Front. It's pretty normal. It's pretty much more or less the same thing as usual. Over at the Niu-York Front, Ukrainian forces launched a counter-offensive over in the Sumy region and Pivdene region. They are attacking in this area here, probably, like I mentioned in yesterday's report, they are trying to distract the Russians away from the Avdiivka Front offensive. But it's going to be not likely to work because the Russians have a superior number of manpower in the front lines. So the Russians is going to be able to aptly deal with all this situation that is developing. Russian forces also geolocated much further into the Ukrainian territory than previously expected, and this actually changed the front line, and this is also acknowledged by the Ukrainian OSIN, this Deep State UA. So we shall continue to monitor the Niu-York Front. We move into the Avdiivka Front, where the Russian Avdiivka offensive is currently ongoing. Fighting is reported at Novomykhailivka, at Stepove, bad arrow, at the coke plant, in the northern part of Avdiivka, in the southeastern part of Avdiivka, at Pervomaisky, as well as Nevelsky. So this is current strategic situation. This attack from the Sheveni-Tonenke region was not reported. The concentration seems to be in the northern part currently, right now, and as well as the usual at Pervomaisky and Nevelsky region. The Ukrainians are actually attacking the southern part though. So this is the counter attack that the Ukrainians are currently doing, trying to push back in the south, or trying to put pressure on the Russians. According to the Ukrainian sources, they say that the Russians in the southern neighborhood is now in the all-round defense posture. So they are defending at all costs that salient that they managed to break through in. However, the Ukrainians concentrating on the south means that they might be under investing in the defense of the north, which we actually see in this continued breakthrough from the Russians, with the Russians breaking through more of this Dacha region into the neighborhood, into the suburbs, and then expanding slight control over in the just off the forest. And there is this fight in the railway line region, and this actually is corroborating a lot of the Russian claims. There is a lot of rumors yesterday, which was greatly fiercely debated between pro-Russian and pro-Ukrainian people on Twitter. I wasn't involved in it. I don't really care. And then but unfortunately for the pro-Ukrainian side, Deep State UA later came out with their mapping update to show that Russians indeed is fighting at the bridge region, or where there's a bridge over the railway line, exactly that place, and which was fiercely denied by Ukrainian supporters. So this was unfortunate, and the gray zone is very big in this area here on the Ukrainian mapping. So the front line may change at a very fast pace. So given these front line changes, I suspect that the Ukrainians are very routed in this area here. They are struggling to hold together and organize their defense, and we are likely to see bigger or fast breakthroughs or expansion of control zones, as per we are seeing over the past few days, because we are looking at Russian expansion of control in the northern part of Avdiivka almost on a daily basis. So we will continue to monitor the situation. The important thing to note is that the front line, from the front line all the way to the road, the last road in the outer border road of the Avdiivka city, is less than 800 meters, and you don't need to go all 800 meters to control the road. You just need to go up to 500 meters from the front line, and you will have total fire control over the road, because a rifle can fire easily, at 400 meters effectively killed, and a tank easily can fire 1-2 kilometers. So at 500 meters, you can have literal infantry easily able to do DRGs or do probing attacks into towards the roads, the main roads, and basically the Ukrainians will be entirely operationally encircled. So if I zoom out a little bit, you will be able to see that this is the road, the outer road, which the Ukrainians probably use a lot to access the Kharkiv region and the rest of the Avdiivka region. And so this is the road they head through, and this is actually where the only lifeline, the only road out of Avdiivka currently is. So the Ukrainians have to control this area here, and so this is definitely not looking like anything. I'm just happen to draw in this way. You know what I mean. If you don't understand, it's okay. It's okay. Then so this is this area here that the Ukrainians have to hold in order to allow the Ukrainian forces to continue to redraw if they decided to abandon this area. Alternatively, the Ukrainians can do a massive counter-offensive action against the Russians and try to push them back, to push them out of this salient or this breakthrough that they managed to get. But tentatively, the Ukrainian organization seems to be a bit messy right now at Avdiivka. Some footages, selfie recordings suggest that the Ukrainians, the soldiers currently at Avdiivka, is very pinned down. They are all hiding in the basement. They are unable to come out. So situation is looking really bad. So we move away from the Avdiivka front. We move into the Donetsk front. So this is Donetsk city, and this is Donetsk front. At the Marinka sector of the Donetsk front, the Russian forces is reported to be attacking Krasnohorivka, Georgiivka, Boyeda, as well as Novomykhailivka. Particularly over at Novomykhailivka, we have some major news. The Russian forces have entered Novomykhailivka on the eastern part, and then they seems to be progressing very quickly towards the center of Novomykhailivka. So in tomorrow's report, we might actually see the Russians fighting in the middle of Novomykhailivka. And so if you're pro-Ukrainian, I would suggest you brace for some bad news. Many bad news. So that is a situation that I want to highlight. And this basically confirms the battle of Novomykhailivka has clearly started. And we shall continue to monitor to see how this progress. Otherwise, we have some geolocations like shelling, I think some destroyed mortar guns of the Ukrainians, and then off Boyeda, there's another infantry fighting vehicle getting destroyed, and a Georgiivka FPV drone attack. So these are all some of this geolocation of Ukrainian forces showing that they have presence in this area here. They can continue to send in reinforcements to fight the Russian offensive in these areas here. However, these are probably the reserves, and if they send you have finished all your reserve, you're going to have a total collapse of the front line. And we move to the other side of the Donetsk front. There's nothing being reported. The Russian attack towards Zolota Neva was not reported this time round, and we move into the Zaporizhzhia front. So this is Zaporizhzhia city, and this is the Zaporizhzhia front. At the Velika Novosilka sector of the Zaporizhzhia front, there is geolocation of Ukrainian forces getting airstrike by the Russian Air Force. This is near Uruzhaine, which is over here. The Russians are also attacking in the Staromayevsky and Uruzhaine region. So this is currently happening, but this is not not known to be assault. It's not like the Novomykhailivka or the Avdiivka front situation. It's probably more positional in nature. That means they are fighting in position. So we move away from this area here. There's nothing reported at the Prione region, finally, interestingly. Or maybe did I forgot to press yeah, I forgot to change the color. Yes, the Ukrainians actually counterattacked at Prione. Did I miss anything else? Okay, so false alarm. The Ukrainians are attacking a Prione. However, this is reported by the Russian Defense Ministry. We shall continue to monitor. Oh, I know why it's not blue. It's not the dark blue, because this was reported previously in the previous SITREP. So I can put it back. I'm gonna put it back. Okay. So we move on. Nothing at the Huyaipole sector. We move into the Oleksiivka sector. So this is the Kharkiv, and this is Oleksiivka sector. The Russian forces are not attacking at Nastyanka this time round. It was not reported. The focus is currently in the Ukrainian salient over at Robotine. The Russians are attacking Robotine in the south of Robotine, in the west of Verbove, as well as northwest of Verbove. The Ukrainians counterattack over in the west of Verbove, and information coming out from this region suggests that the Ukrainians are trying to attack in this area here. However, they are unable. Even if they succeeded in pushing back the Russian forces, they then got bombarded by artillery, causing them to unable to hold the ground that they capture. So this is the current situation, and geolocation of Ukrainian forces getting hit by FPV drone along the highway is the continuing theme of the situation over at Robotine. We shall continue to monitor this situation. The area in this the fighting in this area also is very positional in nature. They're fighting in positions. There is no aggressive push to capture ground, so which is why we are always talking about fighting in this area here, but we are not seeing frontline changes. So we will continue to monitor. Of note, over the past 24 hours was the revelation from the mapping by Deep State UA that the Russians seems to have captured this a major fortification just off Robotine. In their mapping, they show that the Russians have control in this area here, and the Ukrainians seems to have the control over of the forest. So we will continue to monitor and see how this plays out. This is kind of a surprise for me to see the stronghold being lost to the Russians again. Over at Kupyansk, the Russians continue their probing attacks. Yesterday we reported that the Russians attacked Pyatikaki. The day before it was Kupyansk. This time round it was Zarybyanki. So this is the new one. In the Zarybyanki region, the Russians attacked. So we will continue to monitor and see, how this continues. For those that are not aware, the Russian forces have probed Shebaki, Stepove, Pyatikaki, Zarybyanki, and Kupyansk at different times. So this is harassment as far as I can tell. So the Ukrainians should report to the police about it. And we move into the Kherson Front. This is Kherson City, and this is the Kherson Front. At the Kherson Front, Ukrainian forces reinforced Krinky. According to Ryba, they did write a long thing, but basically they are saying that under the cover of artillery and mortar fire, the Ukrainians sent in reinforcement, and they managed to push out the Russians towards the western part of the settlement, causing the Russians to redraw from this area here. However, in the latest mapping by the Ukrainian side, the Russians seems to have full control of this entire forest region. This entire forest region is now fully under Russian control, and despite they lost this little building, largely the Russians have a more advantageous positions, while the Russians did give up on this these buildings, settlement part. But the settlements are mostly flattened, so it's not very particularly important. So if the Russians have this full control of this forest, we can imagine that the Ukrainians are pretty stuck within this settlement with the Krinka River back on their back. So we shall continue to monitor and see how this progress. It is looking really not very good, as I always mentioned, but the Ukrainians continue to throw men into that into the beachhead. So maybe they know what they are doing. And over on the opposite shore at Avdiivka, there is a drone attack on Ukrainian systems, and that's about it. So this is the summary for the day of 714 for the 7th of February, and I'm going to do some conclusion.